Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and tonight we are live. We have a panel, and we are looking at the first two albums from Mott the Hoople. Mott the Hoople from 1969 and Mad Shadows from 1970. So we're just here trying to turn you on to stuff, so let's get started.
Grant is changing the world one track at a time on Grant's Rock Warehouse.
Welcome, everybody. It is Thursday, and we're live. In fact, there's two live shows tonight. It's a double whammy, because after this show, Stephen Schnee will be on, and we will be talking the Osmonds, believe it or not. But we're going to. Anyway, tonight we are talking Mott the Hoople. We're talking the first Mott the Hoople album from 1969 and Mad Shadows from 1970. The panel tonight, we've got the Parish of Rock, and we've got Nick Esquire, and we have Jamie Laszlo. So what a great panel to talk Mott the Hoople. So anyway, the whole goal with this is to see if these albums are something that, if you don't know them, we're going to try to turn you on to this band, because who's really talking Mott the Hoople? Nick, who's talking Mott the Hoople? We are, for God's sake.
Just the four of us, I think.
Just the four of us talking Mott the Hoople. So anyway, we're going to look through the whole catalog. This will be a series. Let's see here. Nathan's here already. Nathan, nice to see you. Jason's here. Stephen, David, nice to see you. Jay, how's it going? Webb, of course you're here. But anyway, we're going to keep it loose. We're just going to have a discussion. Now, if anybody in the chat knows these records, let us know what you think about it. We're going to kind of do it like we've been doing it lately. We'll look at these two records. Everyone will give their scoop on the record, what they like, what they don't like, give a review, and at the end, we're going to go out to the exactly, Ernesto. The parish made it. We'll go out to everyone in the chat and we'll get their rating of it. So we'll just compile it all together, and there we go. So I'm going to see it as I go. We're going to go Parish, Nick, and Jamie, and then myself, and we're just going to go around. So Parish, how's it going? Do you want to give like an intro on?
Yeah,
it's been really good giving like a little introduction. Do you want to talk a little bit about?
Yeah, let's do that then. So, Mott the Hoople, who were formed in Hereford, which is a city which is less than 20 miles from where I'm sitting at the moment. So I'm almost on home territory for Mott the Hoople. The most well-known members were Ian Hunter and Mick Ralphs, the guitarist, and they were there through the whole of the band. They came into fame in the early 70s as part of the glam rock, particularly with all the young dudes. That was a big hit in the UK, and I think a hit over there with you guys as well, wasn't it, in the States? Yeah. And I suppose in that respect, you would say that they were discovered effectively by David Bowie, because it was David Bowie that persuaded them not to split up in 72 and handed across all the young dudes so that they could record it. So you could, as I say, you could say they were discovered or maybe saved by David Bowie, whichever way you want to look at it. So the first two albums we've got here predate that, obviously. These are the 69 and 70, as Grant said earlier, and this is the first one we're going to talk about is the self-titled Mott the Hoople. For those who don't know, Mott the Hoople's name comes from a book, which I've never read, so I looked it up on Wikipedia earlier, and it amused me because it said the lead character is a character called Mott, who was a person and not a hoople. So I don't actually know what a hoople is, but that did amuse me, that Mott wasn't actually a hoople, he's a person. So there you go. So that's kind of the background. I suppose you would class them as glam rock, but they're also categorized as hard rock or heavy rock as well from the early 70s. And of course, Ian Hunter is still going. He released an album last year and the year before in Defiance. And it's remarkable the fact that he's now 85 and he's still releasing fantastic music. And interestingly, as I'm sure we'll talk about it, his vocals in particular don't actually sound that much different all these years later from those first albums. So A long history between Mott the Hoople, who I think there's 7 albums from memory. And then there's a whole series of solo stuff from Ian Hunter on top of that. Now, I've got a confession to make, which is I don't often go back to these first 2 albums. I have to say I'm more of a fan of the last 3, the ones from all the young dudes onwards. So it was actually really interesting going back and listening to these for the first time in a long time. So I've come to it a little bit with fresh ears for that reason. Do you want me to start with talking about the album, sort of the tracks? Right?
Yeah.
Or do you want
No,
to
just
go around the others first?
You might as well keep going.
Okay, well, if I start with the first couple of tracks, maybe. The other thing that's worth mentioning is that there's 8 tracks on the album. And of those 8 tracks, half are new and half are cover versions. So a bit like we've discussed with Slade when we did the early Slade albums, a lot of cover versions creeping into the 1969 album. The first track is a cover of You've Really Got Me, the Kinks song. But what's unusual about it, it's purely instrumental. So there's no vocals. So even though Ian Hunter's vocals are probably one of the distinctive aspects of the band, on the very first track that's recorded on the album, there is no Ian Hunter vocals. And I guess like most people, you probably sit there thinking, well, do we really need another cover of You've Really Got Me? You've got the original by the Kinks and you've got Van Halen's, do you really need anything else? But I'd say the fact that it is an instrumental kind of makes it stand out and make it more interesting. And certainly for me, I quite enjoy it still. I think it's fun. And as I say, it is a bit different. And then the second track is called At the Crossroads. That is also a cover version. And I would say this sums up the album in a way that the first track doesn't, in that it sounds, to me at least, very Bob Dylan. His vocals are very Bob Dylan. The actual song itself is musically like a Bob Dylan song. And we'll get into the rest of the tracks later, but I would say that's a fairly typical of the album, certainly to my ears, that it sounds very Bob Dylan-like, and you can see a huge influence certainly on Ian Hunter's vocals on this album from Bob Dylan. So that's my views on the first couple of tracks, Grant.
Excellent. I will add that You Really Got Me. Don't you think it's odd that you would start the album off with a cover version with no vocals? And the funny thing is with this, that they end this track and there's like a keyboard organ part that's going. You know, they must have been jamming to this at the end. Where's the rest of it?
Let me throw in that.
And why is it at the beginning?
We talked about this off air, and I know this album will come up, but on this album, 2 Miles from Heaven, there is a vocal version of You Really Got Me. It does exist, and it's Mick Ralphs singing it. So I didn't know about that until much later on, but it does exist. Why they didn't release the vocal version versus the instrumental, I have no idea.
So is that the same? Is that the same recording, or is that a different recording?
It's allegedly different chord. They added different elements later on different tracks, but this track in particular had Mick's voice recorded at the time. So it sounds just like the track. Matter of fact, you can't find it on the streaming services. You can find this on YouTube though, so you may want to check it out. Matter of fact, I found another a live instrumental of them doing this on the Beat Club, and it was smoked. It was really good. But I agree with Grant. It's a very odd way to start the album, but then again, that's what gives it, for me, it's interesting. I liked it.
Yeah, and then at the Crossroads, you mentioned that whole Bob Dylan thing. Totally Bob Dylan. It's almost like, I don't know, because he doesn't really return to that like on the subsequent records, but here it's very Dylan-esque. And it almost kind of reminds me like songs from Big Pink, kind of like the band, Bob Dylan, that feeling. Yeah. But if you think about when this came out, 1969, that's right there in that pocket for that kind of stuff. So I don't know. It sounds like that they were playing a lot of it at the time, and they were very influenced by it, or at least
I don't know if you heard the original version by the Sir Douglas Quintet, and that song is written by Doug Sahm, who's a he's got the underground legendary status, Texas guy, but
Yeah.
their version has a little more drive, a little more force to it. And I can't really say that Doug Sahm sings it like Dylan, but if you notice, just on this album, Ian Hunter's got the Dylan on 10. And I think that was part of the thing that they were looking for here. It's like, all right, this sort of bombastic band with a guy who sings like Dylan. That was sort of like the angle, and some sort of Stonesy thing in there too. But you're right. You're right. After this album, the Dylan vocal phrasing is muted quite a bit, but which I think was a smart move. It was a smart move.
It is on the Mott the Hoople albums, but on some of his solo stuff, I think he sounds quite Dylan-esque.
Yeah, you're right. There's no doubt about it.
Well, I have a question though. Well, Parachute, we've talked about this on the Slade series, but the Sir Douglas Quintet, they weren't probably in the UK. No one knew who they were, so they could do their own version of it, and no one would know. Kind of like the next track, which is a Sonny Bono pen track, "Laugh at Me," which actually was Sonny's first single in like 66, 67, but it was also on the wonderful World of Sonny and Cher, 1966. I mean, it's a great song. Sonny is a good songwriter, but kind of a bizarre choice.
Very.
Sonny's version sounds like Dylan.
Yes. It's odd, but I'm sure no one, I don't know, was Sonny and Cher big over there, Parrish?
Only for a couple of songs.
All right. So no one would probably even know this track.
Yeah, those tracks, neither of those tracks were known over here. Whether that's the Mott the Hoople version or the originals, they weren't known over here. So,
but I like it though, and you know what? I'm going to throw this out. There is so much Dylan on here that when I hear the organ on it, it sounds like the organ that's all on Bringing It All Back Home. I swear to God.
It sounds like a Rolling Stone. It was lifted from like a Rolling Stone and placed right there.
It does. It's got that same tonality, the same kind of phrasing. Ugh.
I didn't mention earlier that the album's produced by Guy Stevens, who did quite a lot of stuff through the 70s. In fact, worked with the Clash as well towards the end of the 70s. So quite a varied career. And he was pushing for Mott the Hoople to sound like the Rolling Stones. And Mott the Hoople were pushing back not to sound like the Rolling Stones. And I think you can hear that on the album. There's aspects of it, as you said earlier, Jamie, there's aspects that sound very Rolling Stones on the album. And then there's other bits that sound very, very Bob Dylan. And I think that's probably why. It's because of that tension between the two.
Could be. Could be.
Oh, your volume up.
What's that?
Your volume just went up. You were kind of low there.
Well, evidently it was low. I guess I have control. Oh, yeah, it was really low, wasn't it?
Yep.
Well, sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. But I'm back now.
You down now.
Oh, okay. So anyway, okay, so Laugh at Me with Sonny Bono. Backsliding Fearlessly. We get an Ian Hunter original, and it's that nod to Bob Dylan. There it is. It's there again. Both the melody, the lyrics, kind of reminds me times they are changing. I don't know about anybody else.
And the backup singers sound like they all drank a bottle of rum before they recorded it, and they're all just singing along, all boozed up, hanging on one another.
Yeah, now we're thinking times are changing. This isn't more Birds-like. This is much more Dylan-like. I don't know. What's everybody think of this track?
I like it. I like all the tracks on this album.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they sound like Dylan, but it's their first album. They got to get their feet underneath them. You know, it takes a while for bands to get their sound sometimes. Not everyone's Guns N' Roses. Boom. You know, sometimes it takes a few records.
Yeah, I'm back and I'm louder than ever. Oh, great. Here we go. Anyway, sorry. I must have hit a button. It happens here on this channel. Lot of errors can be made. But I think it's I dig it. It's just, you look at this era of Mott the Hoople, and they really don't have a particular, they're all over the place stylistically, but pretty much stuck in a Bob Dylan lane. But it's fine. It's all right.
I prefer Laugh at Me. I think even though that's a cover, that sounds really good.
I love it.
I think it fits in really well. Backsliding Fearlessly, I like the lyrics, but I don't like the song very much. I think it's an average song. And I do think he's lost any identity, which maybe he's got on some of the other tracks. So it's interesting that the one that I think sounds least Mott the Hoople was one that he actually wrote on this album. But there you go. But the previous one, as I say, Laugh at Me, I think it's really good. I think that's a really good song. I think they do a really good version. I did have a quick listen to the original, and it's not hugely different in the style, but I think the sort of vocally it sounds a lot different. But it's very sort of melancholy and it's almost like that thing about the clown who's the one who's never happy and always crying, isn't it? It's that kind of theme, and I think it sort of fits in quite well, really.
What I like about these songs, though, are you listen to the beginning of a lot of these songs and you think you got the gist of it. Okay, this is going to be like a Dylan type song, or this is going to be you listen to Rock and Roll Queen. Oh, this is the upbeat, probably 3.5 minute rocker. And they're not. The second half of these songs always take a turn. They somehow turn into this jam session. And you're like, where did this come from? I mean, if you were sampling this album, sometimes I sample albums. I'm guilty of doing it. All right, I got the gist of it. All right, you can't do that with this album. You don't have the gist of it in the first 3 minutes. The last 3 minutes is going to be totally different than the first 3.
Yeah, Jamie's right. I mean, matter of fact, to me, this is what this first album is all about. There's like a certain combustion with this band. And so even though there's this, we keep talking about these Dylan vocals, but it's Dylan vocals over like the MC5 and punk, and it's like a garage band. There's like so much energy with these guys. So it's a weird mishmash, like we've been saying, that, yeah, there's Dylan, but there's things take a turn, and there's crazy B3 organ, and so you're exactly right there. You have to listen all the way through and buy into it, because you don't know where it's going to go. By the way, at the end of Laugh at Me, it's helpful to hear. I had the AirPods in today, and I never noticed at the end of Laugh at Me, there's background vocals where they keep repeating over and over again, Mott the Hoople, Mott the Hoople. I never heard that before. So listen for it. It's kind of ear candy buried in there. Not only that, but Laugh at Me, they played live. So they were out there trotting that song around, at least in the early 70s. So it was a song that they incorporated into their set list.
I'll tell you what's disappointing. What's disappointing?
So go on, Jeremy.
You have all these songs, and they got the extended jams, and you're like, and then you see track 7's coming up, 10 minutes long. You're like, that one's gonna really rock, and it's the one it doesn't.
It's an odd record.
Well, that for me is the problem.
Yeah,
but the thing, it's interesting what you say about the songs, Jamie, because I think the album's like that. I think if you think you've got the feel for the album on side 1, you flip it over on side 2. I think it's very different.
Oh yeah.
So you kind of get a different feel altogether when you flip it over. And I must admit, I much prefer side 2 to side 1.
Wow.
Really?
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, I have 2 songs that are like 2 minutes long that aren't really needed at the same time. I get what you're saying. It's more rocking. We'll
get to why.
It's more experimental.
Well, when we talk about it, I'll explain maybe why I like them.
Yeah, so we've got the next track on here is Rock and Roll Queen, which is another Ian Hunter original. This is like a signature track. I think, give me a break, but what a great song this is.
It's actually Mick Ralphs wrote it.
Oh, he wrote it. But he's singing it, though. Ian Hunter's singing it. That's
he is. Yeah,
that's what I really.
I think this is the only track on the album that I think sounds classic Mott the Hoople. I think this sounds very similar to what they were going to do later in the 70s.
A glimpse of things to come.
Yeah, exactly. And
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's the best track on the album. Maybe for that reason. But again, it's one of these that you think you know what it is, and it sounds quite almost like a pop rock song, and then all of a sudden it becomes a jam song towards the end. I mean, it is quite different, and it changes, and that's one of the reasons I like it, is because of that. So so I think side 2 kicks off really well with this. It was a single. It never did anything in the charts, but it was picked as the single as well.
Yeah, it's like the band doesn't have an identity, so we'll do some slow songs and then we'll crank it up, we'll rock out hard, and you get that. I don't know, but I hear the Faces, and of course I do pick up a Stones vibe here. But I don't know about you guys. I love the way the mix is. I like the sound of the album.
Yes.
And I swear to God, I hear Jumping Jack Flash underneath all of this. Maybe it's the chord structure that's very similar, but it just totally reminds me of Jumping Jack Flash.
Well, they incorporate that song into the next album we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I still just kind of hear it.
Yeah.
I describe this as next generation Stones because these guys are pretty aggressive. So yeah, it's Stonesy, but this is a when you think let's think about this album. There's a lot of energy here. Who was putting out that kind of energy back in 69 or 70? So I think the MC5 were, and there's a few others, but this band was. I think this album is a great declaration because they're pretty smoking. There's a lot of seems to be like Guy Stevens. You get in the studio and you capture something with these guys. I don't care who has lyrics. I don't care if it's just music. Just capture something, which I think he did. By the way, Andy Johns was the engineer on this album, so it tells me a lot about.
That's why it sounds good.
Sounds great.
Isn't it weird that we're talking about MC5 and maybe the Stooges and that kind of energy, and we're talking about Bob Dylan on the same record?
Yes.
I mean, that's what's so bizarre about this record.
Bizarre. Very bizarre.
But you know what? When you listen to it, somehow it works. And you don't go, wow, that's shocking. You just kind of go, well, that kind of works. They make it work. So I think it's kind of cool. Guy Stevens is a genius. Yes.
Hey,
Ricefield says.
There's an element in here. I want to jump ahead, but we keep talking about these influences. You get it at the end. But Ian Hunter was an older guy who was a sideman bass player for all these like 50s acts. But the one thing that another thread through this music, at least on this first album and then subsequent albums, is there's a lot of Jerry Lee Lewis. There's a lot of Chuck Berry.
Oh, that's where you come on. Yeah. Well, we come on to the next one, Rabbit Foot and Toby Time. And I said earlier about liking. I like that old time rock and roll. My father was big on old time rock and roll. So I grew up listening to all of that kind of music. So I always have, a fondness for it, I guess. So, the next one is, as I say, it's an instrumental, but I think it's huge fun. It's got that boogie piano in there, the rock and roll feel to it. It's 50s rock and roll, but in some ways it's ahead of its time in that a lot of the glam rock that came in the 70s, particularly people like Mud and Shawaddy Waddy and the Rubettes over here, they all sounded like this. So you could say this was 10 years after rock and roll or 5 years ahead of some of that glam rock.
Wow.
But yeah, I love that type of music. So that's one of the reasons I like this side of the album.
Yeah. But Rabbit Foot and Toby Time, I hear this. It kind of reminds me of the Small Faces.
Yes.
Like this could be on Ogden's, as an outtake or something.
Yes.
It sounds like Ian McLaughlin playing the keyboards.
That's it.
I swear to God. But it is of that time period. But
plus it's an odd name for the song, so it's like a Small Faces.
It could be on Ogden's or something. Yeah,
right.
Totally. But he's not here. Weird. Marlon's here. I don't know what you mean. Anyway, so I think that's you like. So Parrish, you like that? You dig that track?
I do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then
I can understand why people wouldn't. But as I say, it brings back fond memories for me.
But like we were talking about, Half Moon Bay is like a 10-minute. It's like a prog psychedelic rock and roll track, I guess. I don't know how you would even classify, because to me it still feels like they're on that Small Faces adventure. To me, it's just like a continuation of the Small Faces. If it was a Small Faces instrumental, I don't know what everybody think about this track.
Respectfully, I think this was the weakest track on the album, and as I've always been on record, I'm not a big fan of 10-minute songs. But I like this. I liken this song more to a dirge. I mean, it's a slow thing, and it's repeats and repeats and repeats. There's this middle part where you described it as like a proggy thing. There's like a ton of organ swells and piano, and it's very soaring and majestic, and that's really cool. But then it goes back to the dirge. Whereas when subsequent records, especially on the next album, you're going to see they kind of take these long songs but do other things with them. But I get it, it's fine. I think the Dylan thing is dialed in way too much of this song too. But here's the thing, it was their first album. I get it. This song was not my cup of tea, but it may have been just the length. If they chopped this thing down to 5 minutes, maybe I'd feel a bit better about it. But this to me was respectfully the low point of the album on an album that I really like.
Yeah, I just don't think they had any direction. I don't know. Did the producer produce? I don't know. It just seems like they let these guys run wild.
If you stack up Half Moon Bay with all the other epics that they do on subsequent albums, it doesn't stack up. That's how I look at this song. I mean, for the first album, it's fine, but they do all these other soaring, majestic, long pieces, and they're better.
Yeah.
So this is the first shot at it. So, okay, good enough.
Yeah, it's fine. It's okay.
I would say, though, I'm not a huge prog fan. And so for me, I wish more prog sounded like this.
There you go.
I mean, you're right. There's elements of it sound like the Faces. It's got that rock and roll in. There's not actually a lot of lyrics. I mean, it's 10 minutes long, and I reckon the part where the singing is probably less than 2 minutes. So it's almost another instrumental, which is what you have on the song before and the song after. But I really enjoy it. I think it's really good. I like the changes, the mood changes, the proggy bit in the middle. And for me, I'm not a bit like you, Nick. I'm not a huge fan of 10-minute songs. But when I do like them, it's generally because they change a bit between, in the song. And I think that's what it does here. I think it changes quite a bit. So yeah, I dig this one. I think it's good.
All right, cool.
I love Vernon Allen's organ. His organ's great on this one and in the track before, and it's real heavy. I mean, like, holy mackerel! You think you're listening to maybe we focused in on that B3, man. You're like, yes. Whoa, is this Deep Purple or Heap? I mean, it's real heavy, and he's not noodling either for the most part. But I love that element of the song. So anyway, yes.
So if we went around the horn, what would everybody give this record out of 10?
You missed the last track.
Oh. Well, no, I just trying to keep it moving. Wrath and Roll is just filler.
Yeah, it's the end credits song.
That's Jerry Lee Lewis. It's Jerry Lee Lewis.
But I love it. I think it's a bit like I said with Rabbit Foot. I think it's great. I wish it went on a bit longer.
Yes.
But,
it kind of ends in a raunchy jamming mess, though.
It does. Yeah. I think I like it.
It's still filler, though.
Well, to be fair, I think half the album's filler.
Okay, well, that's what we need to be honest about. If you think it's filler, it's filler.
We talked about it with the first Slade album, and I think it's the same here. I think they were rushed in. I think they were rushed into the studio without enough material, and they had to flesh it out with a whole load of cover versions. Is my view.
Well, Parrish, what would you rate it out of 10?
I would probably give it a 5 out of 10.
Oh, God, I'd probably give it a little bit higher than that. What about you, Nick?
I would give it a 7.5. I think it's a great first album. I think if you are a casual listener and want to learn more about Mott the Hoople, I would not start with this album. I'd start with the Sweet Spot. But this album, I like it because of the energy. I do come back to this. Unlike Parrish, I really like this album. So, and notwithstanding Half Moon Bay, I just think there's a lot of energy here, and I bought into it. So even with the instrumentals and even with the covers. So I think it's one of the best 7.5 albums you could kind of listen to.
All right.
I will defend my 5 for a minute in saying that for me, 5 means average. So if it's less than 5, it's less than average. And if it's above 5, it's more better than average. And I think for the Mott the Hoople catalogue, which is kind of where I'm grading this, I think this is an average album.
Louder Than Life's giving it a 3.5. All right, well, we'll take that into consideration. All right, I got your number. What about you, Jamie? What would you rate? How would you rate this out of 10?
I dig it. Even though they're kind of imitating Dylan, I still dig it. The covers, I don't know the originals that well, so they don't sound like covers to me.
Well, they do a great job that they make it sound like their own.
They do.
They don't sound like covers.
They don't. They make it sound like Dylan. They don't make it sound like their own. So I guess that's the other thing I should have confessed at the beginning. I'm not the biggest Dylan fan either.
Nor am I. Nor am I.
So that probably doesn't help.
Yeah.
All right. So what would you give it, Jamie?
7.
A 7. Sorry, I didn't get it. All right. See if anybody else gave a score because we need hit
what
the
about
next
you,
record.
Grant?
Oh, me? I'd give it a 7. I would give it also a 7.
All right.
I like the record. It's a little bit haphazard, but it's kind of a fun listen. And, you know, they're trying to figure out where they're going as a band. I get it. I like the production. I like the album cover.
Yeah.
I like the record. Webb's going to give it, okay. Marlon's going to, I'll take your 6. Marlon's giving it a 6. And then Webb gets it a 6.75.
I like the cover.
Nathan gives a 7. All right.
Yeah, the cover's great.
All right.
The inner thing's crazy, but whatever. I don't know if you can see all that. Wacky.
I got it on this box set.
Oh, nice. If you see this on vinyl in the States, grab it because
you don't see early.
They are not.
The Hoople.
They're not around. They're not around.
I haven't seen it in a long time.
We got it for $5.
All right. Our average on this one, we're going on with a 6.25.
All right.
All right. It is what it is. I say it's in that range. All right. Our next record we are going to check out. We are going to look at the second album once I find my graphic, which there aren't many graphics. We're going to go with the album Mad Shadows from 1970.
Can I say one thing before we get into it, though? Just so you know where I'm coming from. I did a video with Martin in 2022 on the Contrarians where I called this my favorite Mott the Hoople album.
Yeah.
And just so you know where I'm coming from, I've gotten into a lot of older bands since 2020. You know, like Mountain and Uriah Heep and Foghat. Bands I knew 1, 2, 3, 4 songs by, but I started digging into their discography. I mean, I've been getting into Shocking Blue and
nice.
After and all Spirit, all these bands. So that's a lot of albums. Of all those albums, and I got into Mott the Hoople around 2021 or so for the first time ever. Of all these albums by these bands that I've heard in the last 4.5 years, Mad Shadows is my favorite of all.
Okay.
So that's where I'm coming from.
Well, why don't you
you lead it.
Go ahead, talk a little bit about it, and we'll go into this one.
All right.
What's your thoughts on it?
So first off, if you get this box set, which is still on Amazon for only $44, you get the first 4 albums, you get some odds and ends on a disc, and then you get a disc 6's live stuff. So you get that. It's called, what's it called? Mental Train. Yeah, Mental Train.
That's still in print?
Island Years, 69 to 71. And then you get this, the classic albums. There, you have all of them right there.
Okay.
Yeah, I have them all for like $60, $65. And then you want to get the live album, of course. And then you got all the Mott you want.
Okay.
So this one, which I did find the vinyl.
Okay, let's look at that.
And believe it or not, I found this vinyl. You just don't see it out there very often. It doesn't sound as good as the box set CD version. This sounds so much better. I don't know why. I can't put my finger on it. I should have played them.
Show that again, Nick. Show that inner sleeve again.
It's a piece of artwork. Yeah, it's a piece of artwork. It's a little odd, but I'm trying to give you a panoramic view of it.
Very cool. All right.
I have to say, if you go walking through Herefordshire, those are the animals you see. You see the Herefordshire cow, and then you'll see a lion, and then I'm joking. Then you'll see a lion, and then you'll see a leopard.
All right, keep going, Jamie. Sorry, we went on a tangent.
Well, the very first song Thunderbuck. What's it called?
Thunderbuck Ram.
That's a weird song title. It's a banger of a song, and I think one of their best songs. And when I did that video with Martin, our friend Marco didn't know the album until I did that video, and he listened to it, and he said he played this song over and over for a week straight. So,
I believe it.
Yeah. Do you want to go song by song so everyone can talk about each
Yeah,
song?
sure. You can lead it off, and we'll just chime in on it.
So I don't know what you guys think, but I think it's another thing about this album. It sounds very modern to me for some reason. I played this with my wife a few years ago, and we listened to it one night, and she said the same thing. And I didn't even ask her. She said, "This sounds like an album that came out just a couple years ago." I said,
Yeah.
"I know it does. It has a little bit of a modern edge to it." And No Wheels to Ride, I think that's how you do an epic in 1970. That is perfect. And I love Ian's vocals on this because his vocals aren't perfect. They're a little pitchy at times, but that's where the emotion comes from. It's a very dark record. And there's in his voice, like in this song, which is great epic and great guitar work, his voice is half sad and half angry at the same time. And
no Dylan.
Just
no Dylan.
Well, exactly.
No Dylan.
Yeah.
No, he's finding himself.
I mean,
The next one, I only wish it was longer.
Yeah.
You know what I hear on what No Wheels to Ride? Isn't that the intro to Blue Jay Way? I swear to God, it's the intro to Blue Jay Way, that organ part that starts it off. I hear a lot of different stuff in this stuff. Because like on Thunderbuck Ram, you know who Mick Ralphs sounds like to me? He sounds like Dave Davies. His vocal stylings, he really sounds like Dave Davies. Which I dig a little bit. I like it. Anyway, keep going.
I mean, just a few things from my point of view. I mean, firstly, I think the album title is really good. Mad Shadows, I think, is a great. And I actually I think it sounds like a wrestler. You could imagine somebody coming on with that handle as Mad Shadows in the blue corner, obviously, Mad Shadows. I think this album actually starts to sound like the Mott the Hoople that we get used to. As Nick mentioned earlier, Ian Hunter's lost the Bob Dylan-ness of his voice, and you can now actually hear it is Ian Hunter as he becomes known later. And I think that's really good. I mean, Thunderbuck Ram, I think, is a fantastic opener of the album, one of the best openers of any album, I think. It's a fantastic song. It shows straight away that this album's going to be very different from the debut, I think. It's almost like a statement of intent that they've grown up, they've got their own sound, and they know what they're doing. And I think Ralph's vocals is really good. I think it fits the song perfectly, and I think it was a good shout to get him to sing it, as opposed to have Ian Hunter sing it. And so go on.
No, I was just going to say, I'm just kind of surprised how heavy this track is.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when I listen to, for some reason, Mountain comes to mind. Nantucket Sleigh Ride, for some reason, just pops into my head.
I think there's a certain darkness that makes it sound heavier than it really is.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
maybe the production on overall on the album, but even on that song, the production almost sounds like there's an orchestra behind him or something. There's a lot of, it's just very soaring. It's a heavy song, but yet there's
a lot of depth heavy to it, sound wise, and the soundscape seems very. I don't know. The only thing I can come to mind is it sounds thick. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think both the songs. Yeah, both the songs though. I mean, Thunderbuck Ram is nearly 5 minutes, and No Wheels to Ride is nearly 6 minutes. But they don't feel like it. They feel like they're sort of 3.5 minute songs, which I think is testimony to how good they are. Because normally I'm getting bored of a song 6 minutes long. I'm normally wanting the next one, but I don't feel like that at all with these. And no wheels to ride. I think, as I said earlier, Ian Hunter's lost the Dylan sound. He's got his own. I think the song's really strong. I love the guitar break in the middle. I think it's a really good sort of solo. And I like when it comes back in, it starts slowly and starts to build and has a real crescendo at the end. It's quite epic. Back to Jamie's point earlier, that quite often the songs start one way and finish another way. And I think this is another example of that ending is as I say, it's pretty epic really at the end. I think it's really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you said like they're long, but they feel 3.5 minutes. And then when you get to track 3, which is 3 minutes 22 seconds, it feels like it's 1.5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Funny how that works.
Yeah.
All right, You Are One of Us. Jamie, what's your thoughts on that?
I love it. I just wish it was longer, like I said, because you blink and it's over. You know, it almost kind of in a way doesn't fit on the album because of how short it is. But maybe an extra 2 minutes or something. I think that's the only criticism I'm going to have on this album, to be honest. I mean, it's an okay song. It sounds like a B-side, but it's okay.
I like the background vocals. I think that's really cool, and it kind of foreshadows some of their other work. And I sometimes I have a hard time figuring out what songs are about. It seems like it's a love letter, maybe to fans. I'm not sure, but one of the things I think we haven't mentioned, but they wrote all the songs on this album. So even though it's 7 and it's a shorter album, they wrote them all. So I find this album, and I think it was mentioned, they're starting to sound like Mott. They're really at cruising altitude very quickly. The parallel I make with this first album, though, is I just find there's a shit ton of energy on it. There's a lot of energy, a lot of combustion. And that to me is the parallel. I think that's a little more contained. Thunderbuck Ram has a lot of energy that's a little more restrained and contained rather than almost like a garage sounding track. But the first 3 tracks just lets us know that it's Mott. They're writing their music and they've evolved.
Yeah. I love this track. I mean, this is my favorite track on the album. You're One of Us. Okay. And I think the intro's really good. I like the way it builds. I think the drum, I mean, we haven't mentioned drumming up till now, but I think the drummer on this is fantastic. There's some really good feels on it.
He's great. Great job.
Yeah, it's a bit bluesy. I guess a bit Stonesy again, but I think the pre-chorus is good. I think the chorus itself is really catchy, and you only have to hear it once and it kind of sticks in your head. Interestingly, the album never had any singles released.
Yeah, I saw that.
And this you would have thought was an obvious single. Well, for me anyway, I would have thought was an obvious single. Maybe it wasn't at the time. Maybe it wouldn't have fitted the landscape at the time. I don't know, but I think it's a really good song.
All right, cool. Walking with a Mountain.
It's the gospel song on the album.
Closes side 1.
Yeah.
What's everybody think of that?
It sounds like church music to me. It sounds like really good church music. Like if I went to church and they did this, I'd be, I wouldn't mind.
Walking with a Mountain? Which song are you talking about?
Walking with the Mountain. I could see that in a very festive church atmosphere. It sounds like gospel music to me. Now, the live version, they rock it up and it sounds more rock and rolly. But this version, there's all kinds of gospel going on. And when they work in Jumpin' Jack Flash, they make Jumpin' Jack Flash sound like a gospel song too.
Well, the next track, the track after it, I can feel that is a gospel track with the million singers. But Walk with the Mountain to me is like prototypical Chuck Berry on speed. It's just like ripping. It's a monumental riff. It's just rips. But hey, if it's gospel, it's gospel too. I'll take it.
When I hear this, go ahead, Parrish. Go. All right. When I hear this track, I definitely hear that Rolling Stones Faces influence, that blues rock thing that's going. And I swear to God, the riffs sound just like Keith Richards is playing riffs on his. It just sounds like Keith Richards to me. It's very Stonesy, and I don't have a problem with that. But
we're obviously all hearing the song differently because
evidently,
this is classic '74 glam rock. This could be Wizard. This could be the Rabettes. This could be Mud. It's that sort of glam rock and roll feel to me. I love it. I think it's really good. And I think it finishes the album, side one of the album, really well. But it is interesting that it's glam rock, gospel, Stonesy,
Chuck Berry.
Yeah.
Chuck
Even
Berry.
the song, even the title sounds like something like some Christian religious innuendo. Walking with the mountain. Come walk with the mountain with me.
Hallelujah, everybody.
Yeah.
I don't know what the lyrics are. I try to figure out the lyrics, but
No.
it literally it reminds me of that meme. Maybe he was on a bus and they're touring because he talks about the Delaware line, and maybe they're seeing the mountains of PA and Maryland or whatever because the mountains are always following him. I don't know. Maybe I'm way off, but I don't care. I don't care. I don't care what it's about. It's great.
I'm definitely going to have to listen to it again now, having heard everybody else's. Yeah. See if I can pick up on where everybody else.
We're all hearing different things. That's kind of cool, though.
My comment on that song is, if you don't like that song, you don't like rock and roll. So if you're interested in Mott the Hoople and you don't like that song, you should question whether you're a fan of this kind of music at all, because that's just a chugging song. It's just, to me, it's unassailable, that song.
All right, next, the side 2 opens up with "I Can Feel,"
Heartbreaking
which is
song.
Heartbreaking song.
I don't know what he's
side 2.
I don't know what he's singing about. He could be singing about that he's because I'm not sure what the lyrics are exactly. I never really followed him, but he could be singing about he's having the best day of his life. But the way it's performed, it just sounds heartbreaking to me. His voice cracking in all the right places. It just feels like it's putting his heart out on a platter. That and the last song together. And I love the backup singers. And this, I was listening to it today, and this is what clicked in my head. And I never really realized that I kind of dug this. When a lead singer isn't your typical spot on lead singer, Ian Hunter, he's got that cracking voice. He's not always doing the right note at the right time or whatever, but the backup singers are on point. So when you have that contrast of a not great singer with backup singers that are on point, it's like dipping your French fries into a chocolate milkshake. It's two different contrasts, but it works.
Yep. Yep.
So,
You're right.
You can feel.
But "I Can Feel" has that organ sound. Sounds like Procol Harum to me. Whiter shade of pale, baby. It's got that kind of thing. And I'm telling you, Ian Hunter feels it when he's singing this song. The emotion coming from his vocal.
And here's what we've talked about this before with Ian Hunter. He has this uncanny way of taking a melancholic, and making it uplifting, which is really what it's all about. So he could take either the subject matter, the way the music is, and it raises it or makes it an uplifting of experience. That's why I think it's a great song. And frankly, there's some great piano in that song too. Don't sell that short. And to me, when I compare this with Half Moon Bay, all right, it's a long song. It's a bit of a dirge, but then they do stuff with it. It goes places. You got the background singers. To me, there's like a fully formed idea. That's why I like this song so much.
That's interesting, because what you said about Half Moon Bay was almost exactly what I wrote about this song. I think this is a bit of a dirge. I don't like it very much as a song, but I do think his vocals elevate it. I think his vocals are fantastic. The emotion, as you said, Jamie, is great, and that picks the song up, I think, and actually makes it a better experience. But I don't actually like the song very much, and I do think it's too long. I think this is 7+ minutes. I would have been happy if it had been 3.5.
Okay.
Oh no. It's
but I do agree with the vocal.
No.
I think the vocals do elevate it. I think it's an outstanding.
I agree.
The emotion and everything, and it's a sign. It's a sign of a good band and a good singer, isn't it? If they can take a song and make it sound much better. Well, certainly in my opinion, take an average song and make it turn it into a classic.
All right, next track, "Threads of Iron." Now this is a Mick Ralphs track. In this, correct?
Yes, but Ian sings it and he sings it. They both sing it.
Yeah, but it's a little bit more uplifting, I think. Got a little bit of, I hear a little bit of honky tonk on there. Pete Watts, I must say, his bass on here, very predominant. And I think he's very underrated as a bass player, but I think part of his bass really stands out to me. And it's just funny the way this song ends, because it just kind of ends in a crescendo and everything kind of falls apart. I feel like it's like the Who smashing their equipment at the end. It's just kind of,
you know what I said it sounds like on the video I did with Martin? I copied and pasted it. I said, this song just goes out of control at the end. Like their tour bus got in an accident and all the instruments are banging around as the bus rolls down a hill, but in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, the ending is phenomenal. You call it a trash can ending, where you just beat the shit out of everything like a trash can. But one of the things that leads up to that, though, is it's like a very bouncy melody, like very un-Mott-like to me. Yes. And then all of a sudden, when it changes, Mott becomes a heavy blues band. That's the quintessential bass riff that they rip on for about 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I love it. I mean, it's as heavy as anything that you'd hear from Led Zeppelin in this time period. But I'm not going to hum it, but if you have to hear the song, it's like a real heavy, like there's Mick Ralphs, that's where it comes from. But that blues riff just rides it all out till you get to that trash can ending. I have to apologize to that song, because I always overlooked it. And prepping for this, I'm like, this song's great. It's fantastic.
I love it. I love it. It's fantastic.
Well, sorry, go on, Jamie.
I was just going to say, I forgot we were doing this show until last night when the Grant texted me. I was like, oh, shit, I know what I'm listening to tomorrow morning.
I knew I had to check with him, because I don't think he writes anything down.
And this morning I woke up and I said, damn it, I really want to listen to CD 1, but I guess I'll have to listen to these Mott CDs instead. And when this song came on, I was sitting here working going, I'm so glad I'm playing this album. I'm dancing in the chair. I'm glad I played it.
I haven't got much to add really to what's said. I mean, I think the riff's really cool. I think it's a great riff through the song. I love the vocals on it. I did wonder, I mean, Guy Stevens again produced this, and Guy Stevens has a part to play in punk and the formation of punk, etc. And I think the end of this song is very punk. Yeah. And I do wonder if actually this is where he got the idea. So he had a brainstorm. We could do a whole music genre sounding like the end of this song.
Yeah, did punk start here? Where did punk start?
I think this is where. Yeah. So if Martin's looking for a new series when he's finished his where did heavy metal start, then he could do where does punk start. He could definitely add this album and this song in.
You might have a point. Might have a point. Anyway, I think it's like one of the best tracks of the album. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jamie mentioned it with the last song where you have the ragged Ian voice with these great vocal melodies. But in this song, you actually get to hear both Ian and Mick Ralphs, and they come from polar opposite ends of the vocal spectrum. But together, it was pretty interesting. I liked it. I wish they did it more. And so that's kind of a neat little undercurrent of that song, too. You get both of them. You get mostly Ian, but you've got Mick Ralphs in there, too. So that's a song. It's like I slept on that song, and I don't know why, but that song is just great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. We love that track. When My Mind's Gone is the album closer. It's spontaneous. What's everybody think about that?
Perfect ending, I think, especially after the raucous song before it. Woo! And this just kind of fades you out on the album in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
To me, this is like the Ian Hunter prototype. His vocals are so earnest. They're weathered. He means it. Even if he doesn't sing the best, he means it. And that for me counts a lot.
He sounds like an 85-year-old guy. That's why he still sounds like himself at 85.
He was 85 then.
And now he is. It's a great ender. And it's a great denouement. It's a short album, but man, there's a lot of action packed in there, boy. That's how I like albums. Get right to the point and get out of there. It's great.
I mean, this song is mostly vocals and piano, isn't it? There's not a lot else going on, really.
Yes.
And normally I probably wouldn't like that, but I do on this. I think it's really good. It's quite melancholy, but I think it's a great song. The lyrics, I think, are very good as well. I'm not, again, normally a lyrics person, but I think the lyrics are good. his vocals are very, I mean, he's got a raspy voice anyway, hasn't he? But I think on this one in particular, his vocals are really throaty. And whilst you're right, it does sound very much like his solo stuff. I think there's something slightly different in his vocals in this one. And whilst I felt I Can Feel was a bit too long, this one's over 6 minutes, but it's not long enough. So, you know, it just shows you, doesn't it, how it's not actually about whether the song's short or long. It's about whether you actually enjoy the song, I think. I think that's the thing that matters most. But, yeah, but only 7 tracks, isn't it? Only 7 tracks on the album, so.
All right.
Unusual.
Well, so far, people are starting to give their ratings. Jeff gave it an 8 out of 10. We've got Webb is also giving it an 8 out of 10. Parrish, how would you rate this out of 10?
I'd give this a 7.
All right. Well, or it's getting better with you. It's getting better.
You wait.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it. Oh, I know, Webb, but, you know, if we go over a little bit, it'll be fine. We got to talk Mott the Hoople, Webb. Come on, man. Louder Than Life, I gave it a 2. Oh,
no
are you really serious?
Come on.
Rethink that a bit.
Jamie, what do you give it?
What do you give it?
All right, I got a Monsters Den episode to do, so at 8. So I am giving this. I'm giving it a
11.
9.5.
9 point. All right,
I gave it an 8.5.
Nathan's giving it a 9. We got a 8.5.
Grant, what do you give it?
I'm gonna give it a 7.5. It's a little bit. Well, I really like that debut, but I think this is a little bit better. I'm gonna give it a 7.5. It's not totally there yet, but I can appreciate it. Marlon, you really giving it a 6.9? I don't know if he is or not. We're gonna take it.
7.
7.5, Steven. Yeah, it's a 7. We've got a 7.5. So this album's doing a lot better than the other one. Ken, where have you been? We do these shows, and I waited for you, and you didn't show up. Christian, was there a Sea of Tranquility episode because you were playing somewhere else? All right, Christian, me too, Ken. All right, so anyway, we're going to wrap this dog up. Our score, I've taken everybody's into consideration. We come with, ladies and gentlemen, we come up with a 7.9. So I'm going to give it an 8.
Sure.
That's pretty damn good.
That's good.
Wow. We're getting better. So, all right, cool. I want to thank everybody for joining in. I want to thank everybody in the chat for keeping it interactive. That's what it's here. It's all about talking music. I want to thank tonight's panel. This is an ongoing series. So we will be looking at the entire Mott the Hoople catalog and those Mott albums. We'll be looking at those. So we're all about trying to turn you on to stuff. I want to thank the Parish of Rock. And I want to thank Nick Esquire and Jamie Laszlo. We'll see you next month. We'll have another episode. So everybody keep it clean and stay tuned for the Osmonds. We'll be cranking that up in a minute. All right, gentlemen, we'll see you and see ya.
Bye.
See you soon.
Bye.